And let's talk about The Long Walk. So I told y'all over the weekend, Friday, I actually went to go see The Long Walk. And I have to say, after seeing it, y'all probably saw like with my overall review, like I did like a little quick review thing on my social media, like Facebook or whatever. And it was definitely one of the most depressing, not depressing. I don't know if depressing is the right word, but was was left feeling sad and feeling bleak and full of emotion. And I know, like, watching the film, I cannot tell you how many times I shed a tear watching the movie. Like, I don't know what's happening. Like, ever since I turned 40, I've been so goddamn emotional. Just crying over like little thing commercials, little things. Like, I just be in my feelings about stuff. But yeah, even after I was done watching this movie, I had to like gather myself and have a moment. Like, I went in the bathroom, I had to freshen myself up. I was walking down the street trying to put on music. It was still sitting with me even after I was done watching the film. Like, this movie really just sits with you. And there were so many great things I loved about it. And so let's get into her. So, um, I did have to take some notes because when so basically, I don't know if a lot of you are familiar with what the movie is about, but it is based on a Stephen King book. It was directed by Francis Lawrence, who I told y'all he directed Constantine. He started as a music video director before he got into like making movies. He did Constantine, which I love. I think he also directed oh my god, what's the name of the damn movie with Will Smith? I Am Legend. He directed that. He also directed The Hunger Games. I don't think he did the first one, but he did all the other ones after. And so it's fitting that you would have someone who directed The Hunger Games direct this movie. And it's funny how people were like, well, this movie is a ripoff of The Hunger Games. And I'm like, no, it's not. Actually, this book, which was written by Stephen King, excuse me, this was written long before we even had the Hunger Games. Like when I tell people there's been so many iterations of things, like when you look at the Hunger Games, before I even knew about the Hunger Games, there was Battle Royale, which was a movie that was so controversial, it was banned in the United States. Now you could see it. But back then, because of the subject matter of these kids, like literally these badass kids who basically had to kill each other on TV for sport. Like when I saw that, that movie was very controversial, so controversial. I had somebody actually send me a bootleg copy of it. Like that's how illegal it was back in the day. And this is like in I think the late '90s, 2000s, or something or another. But anyway, so the movie, as I told you, was directed by Francis Lawrence. What made me even more excited for this film, it was written by J.T. Molnar. Now I don't know if you know who J.T. Molnar is, but he wrote a film. I don't know if he directed it too, but he wrote the script for Strange Darling. I cannot tell you how many times I've told people about this damn movie, Strange Darling. If you have not seen it, definitely check it out. The way he wrote that script, Kyle Garner in that film was excellent. I remember when Kyle was all over his Twitter promoting the hell out of this damn movie. And it's definitely a good film. So if you have not seen Strange Darling, definitely check it out. It might be on one of the streaming services. I'm not sure which one. It might be on Hulu or Prime Video, one of them, or HBO. Just check for it. And Google Schmoogle, look and see which streaming service is showing it, and definitely check it out because it is definitely a good film. So having him come in and write this script, I was like, it definitely works for me, especially hit on those emotional those strings. But anyway, to get into the plot point, the movie is basically it's a simple plot. It's basically it focuses on a group of young men who live in a dystopian version of America who basically volunteer for an annual walking contest that basically means certain death for all but one of them. So basically, what the rules are, each contestant basically has to keep his pace about 3 miles per hour. If a player drops below the speed for 30 seconds of any reason, he gets a warning. If they get three warnings and fail to resume pace after 30 seconds, they're eliminated with a bullet to the head. That's if they're lucky, because not every sequence of how they died was basically getting shot. But there was other crazy, and I'm not going to spoil any of the stuff if you haven't seen it yet, because I don't want to give away a lot of the focal points on, or even who survives at the end. Because how you think the movie goes, it doesn't go. Because the book and the movie, the endings are relatively different. And I looked it up because I didn't get to read the book, but they were telling me that yeah, the ending of the book is vastly different on how they did it, and the person that survived and how they, how the other person, like, this is a whole situation. They changed it up, which I actually like the fact if you could come up with something interesting where you don't spoil too much of how, do it the same way. So oh, and yeah, and then after, whoever wins, they receive a cash prize and one wish. So some standouts for me. I want to get into that. Let me change the So I want to get into the standouts for me. Okay, so there was a couple of people that stood out. Cooper Hoffman, who you see as the white kid with the fisherman's hat on, he was definitely a standout for me. He played Ray, who basically we meet in the opening sequence where him and his mother are having a conversation and they're driving and then they meet up at the place and she won't let him go. And that whole sequence, his mother was actually played by Judy Greer, who was also a standout for me too. It took me a second to realize recognize who that was. I'm like, is that Judy Greer? Who y'all maybe remember played Karen in Halloween Kills in Halloween 2018. Now I will say this: I did not like the way her character was written in the Halloween films. She annoyed the hell out of me, but that was all because of Danny McBride and David Gordon Green. The way they wrote those characters, I just didn't like the way the Strohs was written. From the beginning, I just felt like y'all were just making Laurie's kids, but I mean, child and her granddaughter and the husband a bunch of damn caricatures, especially knowing all the trauma and stuff that Laurie Strode went through in all the Halloween movies. But nevertheless, this ain't about Halloween, but it's about Judy Greer. I didn't like her performance in that film. I loved her performance in this film. Her sequence with him when she couldn't let him go as he was about to go hang out with these kids before they were going to start the race. That was the first time I cried. It was like, damn, not even 5 fucking minutes into this movie, I'm getting emotional. So that's how crazy this film was. And then that's when we meet like the whole trope of characters where we have David Johnson, who's the black kid. He plays Peter. Now I don't know if you saw, David Johnson. He's been on my radar ever since he was in Alien Romulus, where he played the android Andy. Definitely loved his character in that movie. He's definitely an excellent actor, very much one of the up and comers. I could definitely see if he does TV, an Emmy in his future. If he does film, I could definitely see him rocking an Oscar. And so those are the things that I actually liked about him in the film, and the dynamic between Ray and Peter definitely drives this entire movie, and just the conversations. And that's what I loved about the fact that it's being low budget. We don't get a lot of flashbacks. We get the flashbacks. We get a flashback, okay, with Ray, but we don't really get a whole lot of flashbacks because $20 million budget, you can't really do too much. You got to keep it as simple as possible. You have a couple of actors, they're walking, doesn't cost much to do that. A couple of tanks, some toy, some guns. I was gonna say toy guns because it's fake movie. I mean, a movie. They don't use real guns. So just that dynamic. Also, Ben Wang as Hank Olsen. He was definitely a standout. He was the comedy relief. He was definitely the funny one of the movie. I liked his character and everything. Ben Wang was also in, and it's funny how we were talking about movies that that the actors' talents weren't that utilized, but they were utilized better here. He was in that Karate Kid movie that I just mentioned in the previous story. We were talking about box office. He was in that. I didn't see the movie. I heard that he was good in it. The movie just wasn't good, but he was good in this film. And him, playing Hank and everything and what he was all about, thought he was excellent in the film. Also, Charlie Plummer as the bully Gary Barkovich. He worked my freaking root canal nerve in this movie. And there was a scene in this film that pissed me off to the point where I was just like, I can't wait till you die. But then the pissed off part for me was by the time we got to, because come on now, we do my side characters. There's only, as I told you, only one person survives. So like the side characters I'm talking about is not going to survive. So it's not a spoiler because only one person has to live. And by the time it came up to his death, my feelings towards him had changed because the writing does something in this film where it's just like, damn, now you're making me feel bad for him. So I love the fact that the violence in this film, it wasn't just like violence for violence sake. That there was a purpose to all of this, and then the emotional connection where you actually gave a damn about the actors and everything in this film. One of the people I wasn't really sold on as much was Mark Hamill as the major. Like he was giving me sinister. It was like, what were you trying to channel Darth Vader, your daddy? Star Wars show. But anyway, um, like I got you were supposed to be the villain and all that stuff, and that's cool or whatever. But I just don't feel like they gave me enough where it's just like I felt threatened by him in some sort of way. It was great to see Mark Hamill in another part, but for the most part, I didn't buy it enough where he sold me 100% on that whole situation. Now there was a scene in the film that really got to me too when it was like maybe the second or the third person that was killed, where Ray basically says that he hopes as they go along that the deaths get easier. And then Peter basically responds by saying, that's what I'm afraid of. That we're going to become so desensitized to the killings and everything that we're just going to become so numb by what we're witnessing and all this other stuff. So, and that kind of made me think because it kind of plays into today, like how we've been living today, especially with all the stuff going on in the world and this dystopian feeling and the fascism and everything that's going on with this current administration. That this dark cloud that's hovering over a lot of us, and some of us trying to hold on to that feeling, what little feeling that we have left of humanity, and trying to stay connected to that. Because I feel like a lot of these people in powerful positions that have all this money, all this power, all this stuff, I feel like they're so desensitized, they're so numb, they hate themselves so much because it's like when you have everything, when you have all the money in the world, all the power, all this, all that, it's like what else is there to feel? And so that's kind of what made me think. And I think like this movie is too damn deep. And as me being a deep thinker, I was like, yeah, this movie's a little too deep. And it's just taking me down this road, pun intended, because with them walking, it is taking me down this road that I was just like, damn, I don't know these feelings that they're making me go through. I don't know if I want to keep going, but I got to keep going. I signed up for it, so I got to keep going. And one of the things also I will have to say is I love the brotherhood dynamic and the bond between the male actors throughout the film. Just that overall connect, and I think that's always the thing that I've loved having. Like even it took me back to a time when I was in camp, when I was in the Boy Scouts. Cub Scouts actually, and there was like this group of like seven guys. Like it was me, my younger brother, and like a bunch of other kids that we met, and we immediately just clicked, and we had like this crazy emotional bond that we just held on to from the time we started to the time it ended. Even with all the crazy stuff that was going on, it was just like we were just thick as thieves in the situation. So I think that why I connected so much with this movie because it took me back to a time it was like, where's that feeling of that sense of brotherhood and just love for your fellow man and that sort of thing. So that's what made me really connect with this film more than anything. And I also loved how they showed a couple of things that you may not be comfortable wanting to see. You can't stop. Remember when I told you you have to keep a pace of 3 miles per hour. You can't stop to go to the bathroom. How do you shit? How do you piss? They show all of that. And while I was gagging, watching all of that, even when I had good old diarrhea, and you having to stop for a second to let it on, I just let it run down your leg. He couldn't do it. He had to pull down the pants and stop. And it's like, sir, what are you doing? And I can't believe they actually showed projectile shit coming out of this dude's ass during this scene. And it's like, yeah, when you watching this scene and they're holding literally a gun to your head, being like, you stop one more time to take a shit, I'm gonna blow your brains out. And just that overall, it's like, oh yeah, I can't go to the bathroom under pressure. No shit, Sherlock. Of course you can't go under pressure. You got a gun in your head. What's the procedure when you got a gun in your head? Points for if you could tell me where that line is from. But anyway, so and then also, I love that the film was, a full-on gore fest, that there were scenes that, well, it wasn't a full-on gore fest, I should say. I think that's what I meant to write. That, basically there were scenes where they drove the brutality in front of, in the front for plot purposes. So you do get to see like the brutality of certain kills, but then when it gets down to the wire of the characters that we actually become connected to and that we learn to love, I love the fact that those characters, like the throwaway characters, are the ones you got to know briefly. Yeah, you get to see their kills up front and center, which I totally got why they did that, just to drive the narrative. But when we get down to the wire, where it's down to those, the Magnificent Seven, or as they call themselves, the Three Musketeers, even though it was like a bunch of them, that one for all for one vibe. When we get down to the wire of the characters, I love the fact that how they would focus on the ones who are surviving still and doing that walk, but then when the other ones who would die or whatever, however they died, they would blur out the background. So I actually like that, so it wouldn't be as impactful. Like we know it's coming. I don't want to see it. There was even times for me where I would even just close my eyes and just like let the sound do it. I don't want to see them go out the way they went out. So it's just like and that's what I love about writing, is like when you really have an emotional investment and you care about these characters, that it drives home the narrative. It just makes more of an impact, in my opinion, emotionally. So um as I stated in my closing, the long walk hit all my emotional chakras like the plague. I can't tell you how many times I cried literally watching this movie. And it was good to see a film featuring a diverse cast of characters who all came together for one common goal. And even if for a brief moment they formed a bond like no other, it was good to see a bunch of young men who, regardless of their ethnicity, sexual orientation, or religious background, that they saw each other as human beings. So, um, to wrap all this up, it's definitely gonna take me a while to wanna rewatch this movie because of how heavy it is and how deep it is and the emotional beats from so many of the things, the phenomenal acting. And sidebar, I had no idea, hold on, that Cooper Hoffman was the son of Philip Seymour Hoffman. I was looking at him and then I was like, "Why does he looks familiar?" And then come to find out, I was like, yeah, he's related to Philip Seymour Hoffman. May he rest in peace. So just the fact that that boy's been through so much, especially with his father and everything that was going on with him. And Philip Seymour Hoffman was an amazing actor. He was like one of my favorite character actors. I loved him in excuse me, Boogie Nights. I loved him in the villain as the villain in the third Mission Impossible. He's been in a lot of great movies, and but he had drug addiction issues, that sort of thing. So gone too soon. But yeah, so as I said before, I don't know if it's gonna take me a while to get back. Like when this if it when it comes out on digital or it comes out on streaming service, it's gonna really take a lot for me to want to sit down and really go down that road again because of how emotional it is and all the things that's in it. So, yeah, but I definitely say definitely check it out. It's definitely worth a watch. You will not walk away from this movie without shedding a tear. And with all the films that we've gotten in the past from, Stephen King, books to film that I can think of off the top of my head, Shawshank, Carrie, The Shining, Christine, Stand By Me, which this movie reminds me of. This is a perfect analogy. Stand By Me meets the Hunger Games, literally how it sums up this movie. And Stand By Me is definitely one of my all-time favorite movies. There's a loony up in Tokus. I love that damn movie. And then also, we have Doctor Sleep, we got Misery. Those are some of the films that I love that have come from Stephen King. And I think like the ones that resonate even more are those ones where he wrote as Richard Bachman that weren't fully focused on like horror and stuff. It's definitely one of those emotional films like Shawshank and um Stand By Me and that sort of thing. So this definitely is a film that should be on the list of one of the best Stephen King book to movie adaptations that's out there. So that's my long review of The Long Walk, and I definitely want to hear from y'all. What do you guys think of this story? Did you check out The Long Walk? What were your overall thoughts? Or are you planning on checking out The Long Walk based on my recommendation, or were you planning on checking it out anyway? So, whatever your thoughts are on this matter, let me know in the comments down below.